June 1st, 1962. Stage 14, 20th Century Fox Studios. The cameras were rolling on what would become Marilyn Monroe's final film. But something went terribly wrong that day. In the middle of a scene, Marilyn stopped acting. She looked directly into the camera and said 11 words that made the director scream, "Cut!" and the entire crew freeze in shock. That footage was ordered destroyed within 24 hours. Every copy, every negative, burned. But one cameraman didn't follow orders. He hit a single reel of film, and what Marilyn said in those 11 words could destroy Hollywood's most powerful people even today. This is the story of the footage they tried to erase, the scene they couldn't let the world see, and the truth Marilyn Monroe died trying to tell. Let me take you back to the spring of 1962. Marilyn Monroe was 36 years old, and she was supposed to be at the peak of her career. She had just signed a new contract with 20th Century Fox for $1 million, the highest salary any actress had ever received. The movie was called Something's Got to Give, a romantic comedy about a woman who returns after being presumed dead for 7 years. It should have been a light, fun project. Instead, it became Marilyn's nightmare. From the very first day of shooting on April 23rd, 1962, something felt wrong. Director George Cukor, who had worked with Hollywood's biggest stars, noticed immediately that Marilyn was different. She wasn't the professional, bubbly actress he'd heard about. She was distracted, paranoid, constantly looking over her shoulder. "Marilyn," Cukor said during the first rehearsal, "are you feeling all right? You seem nervous." Marilyn looked at him with those famous blue eyes. But there was something haunting in them now. Something broken. "George," she whispered, making sure no one else could hear. "They're watching me, all the time. They have people everywhere." Cukor thought she was being paranoid. He had no idea she was telling the truth, but here's what nobody knew at the time. Marilyn wasn't just filming a movie. She was being monitored 24/7 by people who wanted to make sure she never spoke about what she knew. The production of Something's Got to Give was troubled from day one. Marilyn missed 12 out of the first 20 days of shooting. When she did show up, she was late, sometimes by 3 or 4 hours. The studio executives were furious. Fox was already in financial trouble after the disaster of Cleopatra with Elizabeth Taylor. They couldn't afford another problematic star. But Marilyn wasn't being difficult. She was being drugged. Her psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, had been prescribing her a cocktail of barbiturates, amphetamines, and sedatives. Officially, it was for her anxiety and insomnia. But Dr. Greenson had another employer, someone who wanted Marilyn kept docile and controllable. On May 17th, makeup artist Alan Whitey Snyder noticed something disturbing. "Marilyn, honey," he said gently as he applied her foundation, "what are all these bruises on your arms?" Marilyn pulled her arm away quickly. "I'm clumsy. I fall a lot." But Whitey had been doing Marilyn's makeup for 12 years. He knew every inch of her face and body. These weren't bruises from falling. They were needle marks. Someone was injecting Marilyn with something, and it wasn't just her doctor. Then came May 19th, 1962, the night that changed everything. Marilyn had asked for one day off from filming to attend President John F. Kennedy's birthday celebration at Madison Square Garden. The studio said no. Absolutely not. They were already behind schedule. Marilyn went anyway. And when she walked onto that stage in her now famous flesh-colored dress, so tight she had to be sewn into it, and sang, "Happy Birthday, Mr. President," In that breathy, sensual voice, she wasn't just celebrating the president. She was sending a message to everyone who was trying to control her. I do what I want. The studio executives watched the broadcast on television and were furious. Fox President Peter Levathes called an emergency meeting. "That's it," he said, slamming his hand on the desk. "Monroe is finished. The moment we have enough footage, we're replacing her." But what really terrified the executives wasn't Marilyn's defiance. It was what happened after the birthday performance. Marilyn and President Kennedy disappeared into a private room for 47 minutes. And there were rumors, whispers among the Secret Service agents, that Marilyn wasn't celebrating anymore. She was making demands. Wait until you hear what Marilyn demanded from the president that night. Because it was that demand that sealed her fate, June 1st, 1962. Exactly 2 months before Marilyn's death. The cast and crew of Something's Got to Give arrived at stage 14 for what was supposed to be a simple scene. Marilyn's character was supposed to swim in a pool and emerge, surprising her husband who thought she was dead. But Marilyn had other plans. She arrived on set at 10:30 a.m., which was unusual because she was normally hours late. She seemed energized, focused, almost manic. "Good morning, everyone," she called out cheerfully. Too cheerfully. Director George Cukor noticed immediately. "Marilyn, you seem very awake today." "I am awake, George," she replied with a strange smile. "For the first time in years, I'm finally awake." The scene was set. Marilyn was supposed to swim in the pool wearing a nude-colored swimsuit that would create the illusion of nudity. But when it was time to film, Marilyn did something no one expected. She removed the swimsuit completely. "Marilyn," Cukor shouted, "what are you doing?" "I'm giving them what they want," she called back from the pool. "They've been selling my body for 16 years. Now they can have it for free." The crew froze. The photographers who had been invited for publicity shots went crazy, their cameras clicking frantically. This was the first time a major Hollywood star had appeared completely nude on film. But that wasn't the shocking part. After the swimming scene was finished, Marilyn was supposed to wrap herself in a towel and leave. Instead, she walked over to the camera, still dripping wet, wrapped in just a small towel, and looked directly into the lens. And then she spoke. This is what they do to women in Hollywood who know too much. The set went completely silent. Cameraman William Woodfield, who had been filming the scene, kept his camera rolling even though he knew he shouldn't. Cukor jumped up from his chair. "Cut! Marilyn, what are you doing?" But Marilyn wasn't finished. She was staring into the camera with an intensity no one had ever seen from her before. "You want to know the truth?" she continued, ignoring Cukor's shouts. "You want to know what really happens behind these closed doors?" "Someone stop her!" Studio executive Phil Feldman yelled. "Turn off the cameras." But Woodfield kept filming. Something told him this was important. Marilyn took a step closer to the camera. Her eyes were filling with tears, but her voice was strong. "They give us pills to make us sleep. Pills to make us wake up. Pills to make us smile and perform and look beautiful. And when we ask questions, when we threaten to tell the truth, they give us pills to make us forget. But I haven't forgotten. I remember everything." She looked around at the crew, at the executives who were now rushing toward her. "I know about the parties, the politicians, the things they made me do, the secrets I was told to keep, and I'm done keeping them. Hold on, This is where Marilyn named names, and what she said next would change everything. Marilyn turned back to the camera. I've been to places where men who run this country, men you see on television giving speeches about morality and family values, I've seen what they really are. President Kennedy. Stop her, Feldman screamed, finally reaching Marilyn and grabbing her arm. But Marilyn shook him off with a strength that surprised everyone. Don't touch me, she shouted. I'm done being touched by men who think they own me. 2 security guards approached, but Marilyn held up her hand. I'm not crazy, she said. And suddenly her voice became calm, almost eerily calm. That's what they'll tell you after this. They'll say I had a breakdown, that I'm unstable, that I'm on drugs, and don't know what I'm saying. But I know exactly what I'm saying. She looked directly into the camera again, and William Woodfield made sure to get a perfect close-up of her face. My name is Norma Jean Mortensen. I was born in Los Angeles in 1926. I was raised in foster homes and an orphanage. When I was 16, I was married to escape the system. When I was 20, I was told that if I wanted to be a star, I would have to do things, terrible things, with men who could make me famous. And I did them, because I wanted to be loved. I wanted to matter. Tears were streaming down her face now, but she kept going. But now I know the truth. They didn't make me a star because I was talented. They made me a star because I was controllable. Because I would do what I was told. Because I would sleep with who they told me to sleep with and keep quiet about what I saw. But I'm not controllable anymore. 3 weeks ago, Marilyn continued, I was at a party at Peter Lawford's beach house. The president was there. His brother Bobby was there. And there were other girls there, young girls, some of them barely 18. The entire crew was frozen. No one dared to move. They asked me to help recruit these girls, to make them feel comfortable, to tell them that this was how Hollywood worked, that if they wanted to be stars, they had to play along. Marilyn's voice broke. And I said no. I told them I wouldn't do it anymore. I told them I was going to talk to a reporter, that I was going to tell the truth about everything. Bobby Kennedy looked at me and said, Marilyn, you need to be very careful. People who threaten the president don't live very long. Cut the cameras, Feldman screamed, and finally the main cameras were shut off. But William Woodfield's handheld camera was still rolling. Marilyn looked around at all the people staring at her. I'm not going to live very long, am I? She said quietly. They're going to kill me. Maybe it'll look like suicide. Maybe an overdose. But it won't be an accident. She walked toward the exit, still wrapped in just her towel, water dripping from her hair. At the door, she turned back one last time. If something happens to me, if I'm found dead, don't believe it was an accident. And don't forget what I said here today. Then she left. The set remained silent for almost a full minute after she was gone. Finally, George Cukor spoke, his voice shaking. What the hell just happened? Phil Feldman turned to the crew. Nobody speaks about what just occurred. Not to anyone. Not to your families, not to the press, not to each other. Is that understood? Everyone nodded. And get me every piece of footage from today. Every camera, every negative, every frame. I want it all destroyed within the hour. You won't believe what happened to the people who witnessed Marilyn's confession. Within 2 hours of Marilyn's breakdown, 20th Century Fox had confiscated every camera, every reel of film, every piece of footage from that day. The official story was simple. Marilyn Monroe had suffered a nervous breakdown on set. She was fired from the production. The movie would be recast with Lee Remick. But behind the scenes, something much more sinister was happening. That evening, FBI agents arrived at the homes of 3 crew members who had witnessed Marilyn's confession. They were told in no uncertain terms, "Forget what you saw or face consequences." Makeup artist Whitey Snyder was visited by 2 men in dark suits. "Mr. Snyder," one of them said, "we understand there was an incident on set today." "I don't know what you're talking about," Whitey replied, terrified. "That's exactly the right answer. Keep giving that answer, and your career will be fine. Start talking and accidents happen." But the biggest problem was William Woodfield, the cameraman who had kept his handheld camera rolling during Marilyn's entire confession. That night, Woodfield went home and did something incredibly brave, or incredibly stupid, depending on how you look at it. He hid the film. He knew Fox would come for it. He knew they would threaten him, maybe worse. So he made 3 copies of the footage and hid them in 3 different locations. June 2nd, 1962. The day after the incident, Phil Feldman called William Woodfield into his office. "Bill," Feldman said, trying to sound friendly, "we need to collect all the footage from yesterday. I'm sure you understand." "I turned in everything," Woodfield lied. Feldman stared at him. "Bill, don't make this difficult. We know you had a handheld camera. We know you were filming when we told everyone to stop. I shut off my camera like everyone else." Feldman's friendly expression disappeared. "Bill, you have a wife, 2 daughters. You have a nice house in Sherman Oaks. You have a good life. Don't throw it away to protect some ranting from a mentally ill actress." Woodfield felt his blood run cold. That was a threat, a direct threat to his family. "I don't have any footage," he repeated. Feldman leaned forward. "We're going to search your house, your car, your office. If we find that footage, you'll never work in this town again, and that's the best case scenario." But they never found the footage, because Woodfield had hidden 1 copy in a safety deposit box in Santa Monica under a false name. The 2nd copy he buried in his backyard inside a waterproof container. And the 3rd copy he gave to the one person he trusted completely, his mother. "Mom," he told her, "if anything happens to me, this film is proof that Marilyn Monroe was murdered. Don't watch it. Just keep it safe." His mother took the film and hid it in her attic, where it would remain for 37 years. But here's where the story gets even more shocking, because someone else had footage from that day. Remember those publicity photographers who had been invited to shoot Marilyn's nude swimming scene? One of them was Lawrence Schiller, one of Hollywood's most famous photographers. Schiller had captured the swimming scene, and those photos would become iconic. But he had also been shooting during Marilyn's breakdown. And unlike the movie cameras, no one thought to confiscate still photographs. Schiller went home that night with dozens of images of Marilyn mid-confession, her face twisted in anguish and anger, pointing at the camera, tears streaming down her face. He knew these photos could never be published. They would end his career, maybe his life. So he did what Woodfield did. He hid them. For 20 years, those photographs sat in a sealed envelope in Schiller's safe. He never told anyone about them, not his wife, not his closest friends, no one. But in 1982, 20 years after Marilyn's death, Schiller made a decision. He contacted a trusted journalist and arranged a meeting. "I have something," Schiller said. Something that proves Marilyn Monroe knew she was going to be killed. But I can't release it yet. Too many of the people involved are still alive and powerful. The journalist asked, "When can you release it?" "When I'm dying," Schiller replied. "When I have nothing left to lose." June 8, 1962, 6 days after the incident. 20th Century Fox officially fired Marilyn Monroe from Something's Got to Give. The official reason: chronic tardiness and unprofessional behavior. But everyone in Hollywood knew the real reason. Marilyn had broken the most important rule. She had threatened to tell the truth. Marilyn called her friend, the photographer Sam Shaw, that night. She was crying. "Sam, they're destroying me," she sobbed. "They're telling everyone I'm crazy, that I'm unemployable." "Marilyn, what happened on that set?" Sam asked. "The rumors are insane." "I told the truth, Sam. That's all I did. I told the truth about what they've done to me, what they've done to other girls, and now they're punishing me for it." "What are you going to do?" Marilyn was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that would haunt Sam Shaw for the rest of his life. "I'm going to finish what I started. I'm going to hold a press conference. I'm going to tell everything. The Kennedys, the studio, the drugs, all of it." "Marilyn, that's suicide." "Maybe," Marilyn replied. "But at least I'll die telling the truth." But Marilyn never got to hold that press conference. Because 57 days after her confession on camera, she was dead. The last 2 months of Marilyn Monroe's life were a nightmare. After being fired from Fox, she was essentially blacklisted. No other studio would hire her. Her calls to directors and producers went unreturned. She was broke. Despite being the biggest movie star in the world, the studio had been controlling her finances, and now that control was being used to strangle her. But worse than the financial problems was the surveillance. Marilyn became convinced, correctly, that she was being watched constantly. Her phone was tapped. Her house was bugged. Strange men in dark cars parked outside her home on 5th Helena Drive. She told her housekeeper, Eunice Murray, "They're waiting for the right moment, when I'm alone, when no one will ask questions." On August 3, 1962, Marilyn called her ex-husband, Joe DiMaggio. "Joe," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I need to tell you something. If something happens to me, if they say it was suicide, don't believe it." "Marilyn, what are you talking about? Who's they?" "The Kennedys, the studio, the FBI, all of them. They've decided I'm too dangerous to live." "Marilyn, you're being paranoid." "Am I?" Her voice became sharp. "Joe, I've been threatened. Multiple times. Bobby Kennedy himself told me the people who talk don't live long." Joe didn't believe her. He thought it was the drugs talking, the paranoia that came from mixing barbiturates and alcohol. He would regret that for the rest of his life. The day Marilyn died, the official story is well known. Marilyn Monroe was found dead in her bedroom on the morning of August 5, 1962. The coroner ruled it probable suicide from an overdose of barbiturates. But the official story is full of holes. The timeline doesn't make sense. The phone records were confiscated. Key witnesses changed their stories. And most suspicious of all, Marilyn's house was cleaned before the police arrived. Evidence was removed. What really happened that night? Multiple witnesses, including Marilyn's neighbor and Eunice Murray herself, later admitted that Bobby Kennedy was at Marilyn's house that afternoon. There was an argument. It became heated. Kennedy left. Hours later, Marilyn was dead. For decades, the footage from June 1st, 1962 remained hidden. William Woodfield never spoke about it publicly. Lawrence Schiller kept his photographs locked away. But in 1999, something changed. William Woodfield was dying of cancer. He was 71 years old, and he knew he didn't have much time left. He called his son, Michael, to his hospital bed. "Son," he said, his voice weak, "I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you years ago." He told Michael about the footage, about Marilyn's confession, about the threats from Fox and the FBI. "Where is it now?" Michael asked. "Your grandmother's attic. There's a metal box behind the Christmas decorations. Inside is a film reel. It's Marilyn Monroe telling the truth about how Hollywood and the government destroyed her." "What do you want me to do with it?" Woodfield thought for a long moment. "I don't know. Part of me wants you to release it, to give Marilyn the justice she deserves. But part of me is terrified of what will happen to you if you do. The people she named, are they still alive? Some of them, yes, and even the ones who are dead. Their families are still powerful." 3 days later, William Woodfield died. Michael went to his grandmother's house and found the metal box exactly where his father said it would be. Inside was a film reel, labeled simply, "MM, June 1st, 1962, The Truth." What Michael did next would change everything. But first, he watched the footage. Michael Woodfield set up a projector in his home and loaded the film. For 11 minutes, he watched Marilyn Monroe give the most devastating confession in Hollywood history. Everything his father had told him was true. It was all there on film. Marilyn naming names. Marilyn talking about the parties, the politicians, the threats on her life. But there was something else on the footage that his father hadn't mentioned. At the very end, after Marilyn had left the set, the camera kept rolling for another 30 seconds, and it captured the conversation between Phil Feldman and another man who had just arrived on set. "Is she going to be a problem?" the man asked. "A big problem," Feldman replied. "She's threatening to go to the press. Then we need to handle it, permanently." "Are you sure? She's Marilyn Monroe. The investigation would be intense." "Make it look like suicide. She's depressed. She's on drugs. Everyone will believe it." Michael Woodfield felt sick. He was watching people plan a murder. And 57 days later, that murder had happened. Michael Woodfield faced an impossible choice. If he released the footage, it would prove that Marilyn Monroe was murdered. It would expose powerful people, even decades later. It would give Marilyn the justice she deserved. But it would also put a target on his back. The people involved in Marilyn's death, or their descendants, would do anything to keep this footage hidden. Michael consulted with lawyers. They all said the same thing. "If you release this, you better have excellent security for the rest of your life." He contacted documentary filmmakers. Most of them were too scared to touch it. One filmmaker said, "This is Pandora's box. Once you open it, there's no going back." For 3 years, Michael kept the footage hidden while he decided what to do. Then, in 2002, he made a decision. He would release it, but not yet. He would wait until more of the people involved had died. And he would make copies, lots of copies, and distribute them to people he trusted. "If anything happens to me," he told his lawyer, "the footage goes public automatically." It was the same strategy his father had used, ensuring that killing him would only guarantee the truth came out. Meanwhile, Lawrence Schiller was also dying. In 2008, at age 71, Schiller was diagnosed with terminal cancer. He decided it was finally time to reveal his secret. He contacted the New York Times with an extraordinary offer. "I have photographs," he told them, "of Marilyn Monroe's final breakdown, photos that show she knew she was going to be killed." The Times sent their best investigative journalists to interview Schiller. He showed them the sealed envelope, still unopened after 46 years. "These photos were taken on June 1st, 1962, Schiller explained. "They show Marilyn Monroe having a complete breakdown on set, making accusations against the president, against Bobby Kennedy, against the entire studio system." "Why didn't you release them before?" the journalist asked. "Because I wanted to live," Schiller replied bluntly. "And I wanted my family to live. The people Marilyn accused, they didn't hesitate to kill her. They wouldn't have hesitated to kill me." The New York Times offered to buy the photographs for $500,000. Schiller refused. "They're not for sale," he said. "I'm giving them to you for free, but you have to promise me something." "What?" "Tell the truth. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't call it a conspiracy theory. Marilyn Monroe was murdered, and these photos prove she knew it was coming. But when the New York Times tried to publish the photos, something shocking happened. 2 days before the New York Times was scheduled to publish Schiller's photographs, they received a phone call. The call came from a law firm representing the estates of several Kennedy family members. "If you publish those photographs," the lawyer said, "we will sue for defamation. We will tie you up in court for years, and we will win." The Times legal team analyzed the situation. The photos clearly showed Marilyn making accusations. But accusations aren't proof. Without corroborating evidence, publishing them could indeed lead to a lawsuit. Reluctantly, the Times decided not to publish. Schiller was devastated. "They're still protecting them," he said. "Even 46 years later, even with most of them dead, they're still covering it up." He died 3 weeks later, believing his photographs would never see the light of day. But Schiller had made copies, just like Woodfield. And those copies ended up in the hands of documentary filmmakers, historians, and investigative journalists around the world. Today, in 2024, 62 years after Marilyn Monroe's death, the footage from June 1st, 1962, still hasn't been officially released. Michael Woodfield still has it, hidden in a location known only to him and a few trusted individuals. But portions of it have been leaked online. Brief clips, grainy and low quality, showing Marilyn Monroe in distress, making accusations, naming names. The Kennedy family denies everything. 20th Century Fox, now owned by Disney, has no comment. The FBI has released some files on Marilyn Monroe, but huge sections remain redacted. Lawrence Schiller's photographs have circulated in the underground collector's market. Blurry copies, but clear enough to see Marilyn's anguished face, her pointing finger, her tears. But the complete footage, the full 11 minutes of Marilyn's confession, remains hidden. Why? Michael Woodfield says it best. Because the truth is still dangerous. The families of the people Marilyn accused are still powerful, and powerful people don't like being exposed. So what did Marilyn Monroe say in those 11 words that got her killed? This is what they do to women in Hollywood who know too much. She wasn't just talking about herself. She was talking about every actress who had been used, abused, and silenced by the system. She was talking about the young girls she had seen at those parties, being passed around by powerful men. She was talking about the drugs, the control, the threats, And most dangerous of all, she was talking about specific names. President Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, studio executives, directors, producers. She was exposing the entire system. And 57 days later, she was silenced forever. The footage of Marilyn's final scene is proof that she knew she was going to die, that she tried to tell the truth before it was too late. But they were faster. They killed her, staged it as a suicide, and then spent decades covering up the truth. The footage exists. The photographs exist. The witnesses exist. But until someone with enough courage releases the full footage, the complete truth will remain hidden. Marilyn Monroe died trying to tell us the truth about Hollywood. Maybe one day we'll finally listen.